I believe that any type can thrive with any other type as long as you are healthy yourself and your partner is healthy and you're both mature and you're willing to talk about issues and come to an agreement, come to a compromise about things. And I really feel like a lot of people aren't in that position. Maybe both of them aren't. It's very, very easy to idealize people and to not really see who they really are until it's too late, or until you're so far down the road that you're going to be hurt really badly.
I believe the biggest problem in the world is that people don't understand themselves enough. This show is designed to help you understand your INFJ personality, heal from your past, and create a life that you love. I'm Sarah Kuhn, and this is the Quiet Ones podcast.
I started my blog, INFJ Woman, and my Instagram account in December of 2018. I had been through a few really tough years, and finding my personality type really helped me a lot. I started my blog and my Instagram because I wanted to share everything that I'd learned. I thought that maybe I could help at least one person. From the beginning, we've been talking about creating a community specifically for INFJs. And I'll be honest, I've tried and I feel like I've failed a few times. I've tried a few different platforms. Some of them were really complicated to use. Some of them were really expensive, but none of them were right. But the desire for this community never stopped. So many people mention it to me on social media all of the time. I knew that I had to keep looking. I had to keep trying. So recently I made some improvements to my website, and while I was doing that, I discovered that I could add a members area with a forum and groups to my website really pretty easily. And these groups have been updated so well that they look a lot like Facebook groups, and they function pretty much the same way too, but you don't have to deal with all the issues of Facebook. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This is what we need. This is what we've been talking about and what we've wanted for so long. So I'm really, really happy to finally tell you that I found a solution and I know it's gonna work. I've created a community that's specifically for INFJs. It's a place for INFJs to share our ideas and experiences and to come together and support each other in a way that only INFJs can. I truly believe that you're going to find some of your best friends in this community. I've found some of my best friends through my blog and through my Instagram account, so I know this to be true from personal experience. Having INFJs as friends is a whole different experience than having other personality types as friends. They just get you. It's that connection that you've been looking for. It's that understanding that you're looking for. So the best part of the INFJ community is that it's free, and it always will be. Head over to infjwoman.com/INFJ community to join the conversation today. So today, in honor of Valentine's Day, I thought that we would talk about the ideal partner match for an INFJ. A lot of people ask me about this. Who is the best type? What makes the best connection? Who would be the best partner? What type? So I wanted to go through some of the different theories. There are a lot of different theories, and honestly, the true answer to the question, we'll start with the beginning at the with the end at the beginning here. The true answer to the question is it really just depends on what you want and what you're looking for in your life. But let's go through some of the theories. The first one is a very popular theory that I'm sure you've heard because a lot of people talk about it. And the theory is that opposites attract, right? You know, it's almost like this cliche that you hear from everybody. I don't know about you, but in my life, I think about an exact opposite. So an exact opposite of an INFJ would be an ESTP. That just seems so difficult to me. First of all, being around somebody who's extroverted all the time, and obviously there are different levels, right? Because nobody is 100% introverted or 100% extroverted. So it really depends on how extroverted the person is. But if they're high on the extroversion scale, it would be incredibly challenging because I'm very high on the introversion scale, right? So I'm like 90% introverted, which is pretty high. So if I found somebody who was 90% extroverted, I mean, you think about what day to day that looks like. They want to go out and be around people all the time, and I want to stay at home and be by myself. That's going to end up being a problem, right? And then you just move on to the next letter. I lead with my intuition. And you think about an ESTP, they're going to lead with sensing. They're also going to lead with thinking, where I'm going to lead with feeling. And where I'm very um, organized and planned, they're going to be more spontaneous and more go with the flow. So, I mean, honestly, when people tell me that opposites attract and you should find somebody who's the exact opposite of you, I think, oh my God, that sounds like torture. I don't want to do that. Now, you might be different from me. So that's why we're going through all of these different theories. But honestly, I don't want to be with an extrovert because I don't want somebody to push me out of my shell. I don't feel like I'm in a shell that I need to be pushed out of. I like being introverted, and I'm totally fine being introverted. Another thing, people talk about opposites. A lot of people say, well, maybe not exactly like all the way opposite, but like an ENFJ as opposed to an INFJ or an ENTP. In fact, I think I read somewhere that somebody claims that the quote unquote golden partner for an INFJ is an ENTP. I don't know why that is. I know some people who are ENTPs, and again, the extroversion thing really gets to me. um, so again, I guess it just depends on what you want. An ENFJ, while there's a lot of similarities, it could run into, the next one that we're going to talk about is going out with an INFJ. It really just depends on, where they are on the introversion extroversion scale. An ENF or an ENTP, a lot of people say it's like our perfect match or something. I don't know that I agree with that. I know several people who are ENTPs, and you kind of get stuck in this reasoning loop that feels like a lot. And part of the thing with it is that when ENTPs are communicating with you, they're focused on their intuition and they're focused on thinking, right? So they're leading with facts and logic, whereas we as INFJs, we're leading with feelings. We consider facts and logic, but at the end of the day, feelings is the thing that's the most important to us. And so when you get stuck in a big decision or in a big discussion with somebody who's an ENTP, they're going to throw feelings out the window. And it really depends on, their level of maturity and all of those types of things. But at the end of the day, you could get hurt really badly, and it could be a constant battle with them because they don't understand feelings and they don't feel things as deeply and in the same way that we do. And so, you're going to get stuck with, they're looking at facts and logic and you're looking at feelings, and it ends up being really, really difficult to work through. At least in my experience, it has been. So that's always something to take into consideration. Also, I like to think about people, how they live day to day. So if you think about an ENTP, because they have a preceding personality type, they're going to be very go with the flow and very disorganized. And on the surface, that's like, oh, they're go with the flow. That's great, because I'm kind of go with the flow too. We as INFJs are, we want to make other people happy. And so we're pretty much whatever you guys want. And this reminds me of my parents trying to pick a restaurant for us to eat at. which is a little thing, but it's one of the things that annoys me so badly about going out to eat, at least with my parents, because every time we wanted to go out to eat, one of them would say, well, where do you want to go? And the other one would say, I don't know, where do you want to go? And the other one would say, I don't know, we'll just pick somewhere. And the other one would say, oh, I don't know, you pick somewhere. And it would turn into like this long thing of nobody wants to say what they want, and then when somebody did say, well, how about let's go here, then it was like, no, oh, that's terrible, why would you pick that restaurant? And then we always ended up going to like the same restaurant all the time. But really it was just going through the argument of like, where are we gonna go? No, you pick something. No, you pick something. No, you pick something. It's like, just commit to a freaking answer. Like, why is that so difficult to just commit to what you want? A friend of mine has a perceiving personality type too, and it's like torture trying to talk her through. She'll get into like this existential crisis of like, I don't know what to do. I need to make a decision, but I don't know what to do. And so I go through all of the ways that I know how to make decisions. And she's still like panicking about what she should or shouldn't do. And for me, I'm like, okay, you have all of the facts, the pros and cons of everything, what you have to, where the compromises are for whichever decision that you make. You just need to commit to a decision now. And it's like nearly impossible for her to commit to a decision. I mean, it usually takes some sort of outside force to make her make a decision. So, again, I know that there are scales of not everybody is 100% judging or 100% perceiving. So obviously there are scales. And if you're higher in the perceiving end, then making decisions is going to be a lot harder. And the whole going with the flow thing is not always a good thing. So you think about the day to day, and then just like, okay, so you pick a restaurant, now they have to look at the menu for like an hour before they can decide what they want. I honestly think that my older sister has a perceiving personality type too, because when we were young, when she started driving, she's 2 years older than I am, so when she started driving, we used to go to the grocery store, to Walmart, and no matter what she had on her list, every single thing, she would stand there. Like if we were buying popcorn, she would stand there and look at the popcorn aisle for like an hour. And that's not an exaggeration. She would literally stand there for an hour. She had to look at every single box of popcorn and compare the ingredients and compare the price. And I'm like, oh my God, would you just pick one? Like, we always get the same kind anyway, so why don't you just grab the same kind? Like, why does this have to be like some massive decision? But it always was, and every single time that we went to the store, she would do that. And it wasn't just with one thing, it was with every single thing that we had to get on the list. So I would get to the point where I wouldn't go to the store with her, because I'm like, no, it's like torture, and I don't want to have to be in that position. I don't want to spend 3 hours at Walmart trying to get 3 things. I think that's not me. I'm the type of person who makes a list, and I go down the list and get every single thing that's on the list. And if I happen to see something else that I think that I need and can't afford, then I might grab that too. But I'm not the type of person who just stands there and studies every single kind of popcorn. So maybe it's part of like childhood trauma for me. That's like, if you're indecisive, there's only a point to which I can handle that. There has to be an end point to it, or there has to be some sort of compromise of, I will go to the grocery store and you will do something else, because we're not going to the grocery store together, that's for sure. Okay, so the next option is to date another INFJ. A lot of people ask me this. I'm surprised by how many messages that I get of people saying that they found another INFJ, and they're wondering what that match is. Like, is this like the best match? For me, I would say that there are pros and cons to it. it's a good thing because you have somebody who can understand you, right? They know how you think about things, they know how you process emotions, they know how you make friends. You just go down the list, and things are generally pretty similar. But the disadvantage is that they know all of your weaknesses too, and they probably have similar weaknesses, if not the same. Now, at the end of the day, no two INFJs are completely the same, right? Because we all grew up in different places. A lot of us grew up in different countries, if not different states, different cities. And even if you grew up in the same city during the same years, like if you're the same age, even if you grew up with everything similar as possible, you're still going to grow up in different families. And your family has a huge impact on who you are as a person and on your personality as well. Because just like I was talking about, with my parents not being able to decide what restaurant to eat at, I'm sure that there's some sort of issue that your parents had too, something that because of their personalities, because of their childhood trauma, because of, what their parents went through as well, then we're each going to come out with different learned behaviors. And some of it's going to be similar and some of it's going to be night and day difference. So, I mean, it really just depends. Again, it depends on what you want. And I think honestly, it comes down to the person, because like I said, some INFJs have different things that they've picked up from their parents. Some of us are more emotionally aware, I don't know if I want to say emotionally intelligent, I guess more educated on what happens to you, like how your emotions develop, more educated on things like childhood trauma and personal growth, wanting to heal from the past and move on. So it really just depends. I think dating an INFJ could be good and it could be bad. While I don't want an extrovert to push me out of the house constantly all the time, I think I do want somebody who is just a little bit different than I am so that things don't get boring. Just somebody who thinks a little bit differently than I do so that you can see different sides to issues. I tend to be very black and white in the way that I think about things. And I know that that's not always a good thing. I know that there needs to be more compromise. There needs to be more of like an in-between type of mentality, more of a moderate type of mentality rather than all or nothing all the time. And I think about too, like the crises that I go through. It would be nice to have somebody who didn't feel things the same way, who could just bring in a different point of view and help me down off of the cliff, I guess. And that's not to say that an INFJ wouldn't view those crises differently. I have a couple of friends who are INFJs, and we do help each other a lot, and we do see things very differently. So I guess it really just depends on what you're looking for. I feel like I've said that like 1,000 times already, and I'm probably gonna say it again like a million times too. So but I mean, it's really what you have to think about, is like, what do you want? What can you handle? What can you put up with for the rest of your life? I've always thought that, when it comes to picking a life partner, like everybody has issues that you're going to have to deal with, and you just have to decide like what you can deal with or what you want to deal with. All right, so we went through opposites attract and the same personality type. There's another theory that I've labeled oh so close. So there's a chart, and I'm going to post a link to this blog post that I did last year, that's called the ideal partner type for an INFJ, and you can find it on my blog, which is infjwoman.com. So I'll post it in the show notes. But there's a chart that has each one of the personality types listed in columns. And the theory for this chart is that you are a match for anyone who's like next to you on the chart, right? So INFJs, our matches would be INTP, ENFJ, and INFP. I kind of like this theory actually, because what it's doing is just saying that basically if you're 1 or 2 letters off, or if you're 1 or 2 letters different in your personality, then you should get along really well. So, you know, we talked about ENFJs, which is one of them that is that's close to our personality type based on this theory. ENTPs, or INTPs, I guess is what it says. I feel like INTPs are a little bit better as far as being close to us, because at least they're introverts, right? There is a big difference with thinking versus feeling, and then also, you know, we talked about perceiving versus judging, where making decisions, and making decisions comes into play in the thinking versus feeling too. It's not just how you think about things and rationalizing things, it's also how you make decisions, right? So I think about some of the big decisions that I've made in my life. The biggest ones for me are moving across the country. I've done that 3 times now. I've moved halfway across the United States. I grew up in the Midwest and I moved to North Carolina twice because the first time I failed miserably. And then I moved back to the Midwest, and then I moved to Boston. And all 3 of those times that I decided to move, I decided to move because it felt like the right thing to do. It was like my intuition was telling me, this is what you need to do. This is what you have to do. There was no logic and reasoning with it. There was more logic and reasoning when I moved to North Carolina the first time. The second time was kind of like, well, that already failed, so why would you do the same thing again? But when I moved to Boston, it was like all of the logic and reasoning was against me, aside from, you know, there are more jobs available here than there were in the Midwest. But the cost of living was higher. It was a huge populated city that I had never lived in a big city before. I didn't know anybody here. You know, you could just go down the list and there's all these like negative things. So there were a lot of people on the outside saying, that's not a good thing for you to do. You probably shouldn't do that. And I often think about if I would have moved, if I had a husband or a boyfriend or, you know, some kind of a life partner, because if they were a logical type of person, they would have been like, this is a stupid idea and it's never going to work. And so part of me is glad that I didn't have that, because, you know, I had my parents and my friends and some other people telling me this is a stupid idea and it's never going to work. But I didn't have somebody who was like, you know, had another job and was paying bills, like, you know, house that we lived in, you know, they weren't paying for that. So it was just me. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I understand that everybody that I know thinks that this is stupid. That's totally fine. I'm okay with that. I'm still gonna do it. So I think about, you know, my life would be a lot different if there was somebody in my life, you know, like a husband who was all about facts and logic and zero planning, and here's me going, no, this feels like the right thing to do, and they're like, no, that's not enough. So I think about that a lot, and honestly that's one of the things that you can run into with an INTP. My niece is an INTP or an ENTP. It really just depends. She's kind of an ANTP, which if you're not aware, there's introvert, extrovert, and then there's kind of a middle ground that's called ambivert. So she's more of an ambivert. But we have a lot of discussions about things that, are like facts and logic versus intuition. And plus, with her being a perceiving type, then she doesn't like to make plans, right? She likes to keep things open and just see what happens. And so for me, sometimes that's like, okay, I can do that. But when you're talking about life plans, when you're talking about jobs and, moving to a different place, even just now, I live in Boston, or just south of Boston, actually. And I know that my apartment lease is up July 31st, and I'm recording this in the middle of February. So I've already been looking for apartments because for me, it's like, I want to know where I'm going. I want to know what my apartment is going to be like. So I'm looking to figure out where I'm going to move, or at least have an idea of what's available. I don't want to wait until like July 1st and then be like, oh, I need to go look for an apartment. I want to already know where I'm moving to, as soon as possible. So in that situation, that's one of the things that my niece and I sort of argue about. She's like, why? We'll just wait and see what happens. And I'm like, no, let's figure it out now. So, I mean, I can't imagine what that's like being in a relationship with somebody where you have to compromise with them. Like, how do you compromise between planning and not planning? How do you compromise between thinking and feeling? I'm sure that there is a compromise, but to me, it seems like it's really difficult. One of my friends, her husband is an INFP, and they were planning on moving. They planned on moving for a year and a half, like from the time that I met them until they actually did move. And she was telling me about some of the struggles that she had trying to motivate him to even think about moving, because he's an INFP and he doesn't want to plan a move. He doesn't want to even think about it. He's just going to put it off until the last possible minute. And she's like, that doesn't work. You have to, if you're going to move, and they moved actually from Boston to the Midwest. And they both have jobs. They have a daughter who's in school, so it's like there's a lot of planning that has to go into that. And I think what she actually did was she put out a calendar on the wall, like months of the calendar, and she put like a countdown of dates, because she's like, okay, this is what needs to happen by this time, and this is what needs to happen by this time. And she's like, it helped a lot to have a visual of, this is how many days we have left, and we actually need to start planning and start doing things. And that was actually the motivation that it took to help him to be able to move. So I guess when you know things like that and little hacks like that it helps a lot. I mean, that's why we study personality types, right? That's why we want to know these things. So like I said in the beginning, I really think that the best match is to just be healthy, right? So, and that's exactly what I tell people when they send me messages on Instagram. I believe that any type can thrive with any other type, as long as you are healthy yourself and your partner is healthy and you're both mature and you're willing to talk about issues and come to an agreement, come to a compromise about things. And I really feel like a lot of people aren't in that position. Maybe both of them aren't. It's very, very easy to idealize people and to not really see who they really are until it's too late, or until you're so far down the road that you're going to be hurt really badly. I know this is a terrible example, so I'm going to say this up front. One of my favorite shows to watch on TV is 90 Day Fiance. And believe me, I know it's a train wreck. I also know that it is to some extent fake, right? It's a reality TV show. Of course, they're going to make it look, as dramatic as they possibly can. So How much of it is true and how much of it is fake, I'm not really sure. So all I can tell you is that based on what you see every single week, it's a massive train wreck. But for me, part of the reason that I watch it is kind of like a what not to do. And I see a lot of the same patterns in relationships on with the people on the show. Because there are like 5 different versions of the show, and so it's constantly, I mean, there's a new show basically every single week. And then they do one about cast members who haven't worked out with their fiance. They do one called The Single Life. So it follows these same people trying to start dating again. And like I said, you see a lot of the same patterns, but you see a lot of immature people, a lot of people who are in denial about things. I mean, it's kind of usually a given that one person, one of the cast members, because it follows multiple couples every season, right? They probably follow 6 or 8 different couples every season. And usually at least one of them will be somebody who's being catfished, right? And there's a guy on the current season that he shows this picture of this girl, and you can just tell that the picture is heavily photoshopped, right? And she'll text him, but she won't call him and she won't video chat with him because she lives in a different country. That's what the whole show is about. One of the people in each couple is an American, and then the other one is somebody from a different country. So it, he's like, well, showing her picture, and he's like, well, we text all the time every single day, but she won't talk on the phone, she won't video call, and he's like, I'm going to Peru to meet her. And all of his friends and family are going, dude, you are being catfished. And he's like, no, I'm totally in love with her. And they're like, no, she's not real. Like, look at her picture, she's fake. And you could just tell the picture is super fake, like very, very, very filtered. And so then the more that his story goes along, you learn that he's been catfished before. And it's like, dude, this is like really bad. And so of course he goes to Peru, and this girl is nowhere in sight, and she doesn't show up, and she won't text him back. And this season isn't over yet, so I don't know if he's going to meet her. I highly doubt that he will meet her. Every once in a while, those people who you think are being catfished, their person does actually show up. But more times than not, they don't. But it's just, the whole show is like, you're in massive denial, right? He's in denial that this woman even exists. And even if she does exist, she doesn't look like that picture, because that picture is so filtered that the person that he thinks that he's in love with doesn't exist. And then you look at some of the other couples, and a lot of them will even admit, look, I have my own issues. And they sit there at the end of the season, they always do these tell-alls where they all get together and sort of critique each other's experiences and relationships, which is kind of hilarious. It's like the blind leading the blind. But a lot of them are like, dude, you need to go to therapy. And then the other one will be like, yeah, you need to go to therapy too. And it's true, because a lot of them, when they're going through their relationships, trying to bring somebody to the United States and decide if they're going to get married in 90 days or not, they'll talk about, oh, I'm jealous because I was cheated on in a past relationship, or I don't really trust people a lot, so I want to go through your phone in like minute detail every single day because bad things have happened to me in the past. And so you see a lot of these issues, and I think that on the show they just get magnified so much, right? But you see a lot of these things, and then I always look at it and I translate that to my life, and I'm like, ooh, do I do those things? Do I act that kind of way? And I think about it as far as I'm concerned, because I want to improve, right? I want to go to therapy and to confront my fears. And I don't want to be treating other people badly because somebody in my past has treated me badly, right? I look at the trauma that I experienced when I was a child, and we all experience childhood trauma. I feel like that word is a little bit strong for some of us, right? Some people experience really bad trauma, right? Some people go through abuse, physical, sexual abuse, those types of things. And other people just go through normal traumatic things, like rejection. And when you're 5 years old, it hits you a lot different than when you're 35 years old, right? So it becomes traumatic because it happens to you at such a young age. And then a lot of us never recover from it. So when you get to be 35 years old, then it's like, okay, I need to relearn my whole life because I've been experiencing the effects of being rejected when I was 7 years old, and I barely even remember it. And now I don't know how to deal with the rejection, right? So it's like, I strongly believe that before you step into a relationship, that you should seek counseling, and you should address some of these things that you may not even know were there. Because anytime that you're bringing somebody else into your life, all these things are going to be magnified, right? And then not only that, but they're going to have their own stuff to work through too. So it might be, both of you basically ending up in this really difficult place, and not because the two of you aren't compatible, but because you both have issues from the past that you need to work through and you need to heal. So when I talk about being healthy, I mean, that's really what I'm talking about, is that there's a lot of different ways that you can be healthy, and emotionally healthy when you're entering into a relationship, and willing to compromise. A lot of the people on 90 Day Fiance, like I said, I know it's a terrible example, but a lot of them are very self-centered and narcissistic, right? They want what they want, and they're not going to compromise for anybody for any reason. Or they'll look at somebody, kind of like the guy who I am positive is being catfished. He looks at this picture, and this girl is like 20 years younger than he is. But he looks at the picture and he's like, this is my trophy wife. I deserve her. And I don't really even care what her personality is. I just want somebody who's incredibly attractive so that I can show her off to everybody else. And to me, that relationship feels like torture. Because one, I don't want to be a trophy wife that's just there for show. And secondly, I mean, do you really want to live with somebody that you don't know, that you're not positive that you're going to get along with? That just feels like a recipe for divorce for me. So I have to move on to my own theory, because I have my own theory. Of course, I've thought about what I want a lot, and I'm not saying that this should pertain to every INFJ. I'm just saying that this pertains to me, personally. I really would love to have an INFP in my life. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to shut out any other type. So if I meet a nice guy and he's not an INFP, I'm not going to just like not go out with him, because I don't believe in that at all. I think that you should give everybody a chance. But I think it would be really nice to find somebody who's an INFP. I really want somebody that I can be alone together with. I want somebody who, maybe we can go out to dinner every once in a while, but who isn't going to push me to go out with friends constantly, or who doesn't always want to go to things like concerts or sporting events, or, those types of things. And I know that life is different now, post pandemic. But even before that, I was like, ugh, I don't want to do that kind of stuff all the time. Every once in a while is fine. If we plan going to a concert twice a year, I'm good with that. But if it's like every month, I can't do that. That's not okay. I love the intuitive aspect as well. I want somebody who has a strong connection to their intuition and who understands it. I don't want to have to try to explain what intuition is and to not have an understanding there, because I think that everybody has intuition on some level. Some people are just a lot more connected to it than others. And so when you have those people who are deep into sensing, they don't understand intuition. And I don't want to have to explain to them how I know things, or to have to argue with them about knowing something. I have a friend who's an INFJ, and when I say to her that I met somebody and I got a bad feeling about them, she doesn't argue with me about it. She's like, oh yeah, I've been there, I've experienced that. And she'll say things like, oh, you should be careful with them, or be patient and see what happens, rather than you shouldn't be so judgmental, which is what a lot of sensing people say. So not having to explain the whole intuition thing is a big thing for me. I like the idea of having somebody who also understands feeling as well, because feeling isn't just, and really for me, it's not like having big emotions and showing those outward emotions all the time, because that's not really how it is for me. For me, it's more being affected by other people's emotions. It's not wanting to talk about my emotions, like experiencing really big emotions and then not wanting to talk about them. But having somebody who understands that, and when you're talking about big things, coming at it from a feeling perspective is totally different than coming at it from a thinking perspective. So just having that ability to say, I understand that you feel a certain way, that's a lot bigger to me than, having somebody who's 100% focused on facts and logic. So then the last thing is perceiving and judging. And that's the place where INFPs are different from INFJs. And so I think that having somebody who's maybe moderately into perceiving would be good, because at least there's some difference in the relationship, right? And there's some things that will set us apart from everything else. We won't be exactly the same in everything. I have a couple of friends who are INFJs, both of which are married to INFPs, and they say that it's a really great match and that they don't really fight a whole lot. Some of them fight about really big issues, but it's not like the end of their relationship. They can always come to an agreement and a compromise about things. So for me, that just sounds like it's a lot easier than a lot of relationships, because you understand each other so much just from the beginning, and you don't have to worry about some of the big things like thinking versus feeling and sensing versus intuition. So for me, that sounds like the best possible plan. I would love to hear about your partner or your ideas about what is the best partner. I think the best place to put them all so that everybody can find them is in the comments of that blog post that I was telling you about. You'll find a link to it in the show notes, and you can find it on my blog, infjwoman.com. It's called The Ideal Partner Type for an INFJ. If you search for it, it should come up, because I know it's about a year old. Tell me what you think. Which type do you feel like is the ideal partner type for you? And if you're married, tell me how you met, how long you've been together, and why you feel like the match works. I would love to know. One other thing that I wanted to go over real quick, because I think it's really interesting. is I did a post a while ago on Instagram that said, how did you meet your significant other? I'm always interested because I'm single. I'm trying to get back into dating, although that's a whole other story that feels like complete torture. But I'm always interested in how people, especially INFJs, um, have met their significant other. I wonder if there's some sort of common connection. And what I found is that there really isn't a common connection, honestly. So I'm going to read to you some of them that I thought were interesting. One person said they met at church. One person said on a skiing trip, in high school. One person said that she knew her husband's first wife. On a dating site, in a bar. Another one's on a dating site. I'm gonna have to post this video somewhere so that you guys can read them, because some of the stories are really awesome. I'll post the video on YouTube and then I'll put a link to it so that you can read them as well. In university, several more on dating apps, another one at church, mutual friends, college, a monthly ballroom event. One met through her sister and her sister's boyfriend on a blind date 25 years ago. I always envy the people who met their significant other in high school or in college. I wanted to. That wasn't the case for me. Oh, one person says in the gym. His sister was my college roommate's best friend. Yeah, so I'll post this video because there's a lot of good stories. I always expected that I would have this great story because my parents have this great story. My mom told me that how she met my dad. My mom was working in a restaurant, which she called a cafe. And she said that there was a guy who came in that had a really nice car, and that her friends and her made a bet to see who could go out with the guy who had the nice car, like who could get a date with him. And that guy turned out to be my dad. So I always thought that I would have some kind of a story like that, right? Or even just some sort of story of like, hey, I met this guy in Starbucks or in the grocery store or in a bookstore or something. But so far, that hasn't happened yet. So possibly I'll be one of those people who've met their significant other on a dating site, but I don't know. That's a whole nother thing. I have started a new blog I wanted to tell you about too real quickly. It's called INFJ Finding Love. One of my New Year's resolutions was to start dating because, I've kind of, I don't know that I've had the idea. I guess I just carry on with my life feeling like if I'm supposed to have a husband, then he's going to show up at my door. But the only people who really show up at my door are like the Amazon guy. And I usually wait until he leaves to go get my packages. So that's not really, like that's just not going to work if you're talking about finding your significant other. So anyway, I've started online dating, and I wanted to share my experience with you just in case there's anybody out there that has a similar experience or is interested in reading about what dating is like now and dealing with not only dating apps, but also all of the self-confidence that goes into it, and the mentality of, there's a lot of of mental work that goes into it. There's a lot of personal growth. It feels like going on endless job interviews, and a lot of people say it's supposed to be fun. I've never seen dating as being fun, but maybe I just haven't met the right person yet. So anyway, if you want to check it out, you can go to infjfindinglove.com and you'll find all of it there. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast. It helps other people to be able to find us. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you again next week. Hi there! I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm working very hard to produce content that will help you, and I really, really appreciate your support. Also, if you want some more inspiration, check out this video right here.